Okay, so my camera is about to tip over. Well, it's super windy out. Sometimes life is hard and doesn't always go according to the way we plan it. Like the last couple months did not go according to plan at all. Just finding time for everything was tough sometimes. It was a hard couple months. I had funerals I had to go to for family members, and the vehicle problems were ridiculous. But there's not always just the bad times, there's good times too. Like on the upside, I learned to fix my car on my own, and boy, was it a headache. I'm going to go ahead and start working on planting these potatoes while I tell you about how much vehicles are horrible sometimes. Like, I was so tempted to just start riding a horse everywhere, but they have their own problems too. So I'm gonna first put this potting mix in and mix it up with the dirt, and then I'm gonna add some eggshells and coffee grounds and mix in with it too before I put the potatoes in. So the last couple months were tough. I had to miss multiple practices because my car wasn't working. I drive a car that has a CVT transmission, which you guys know how normal transmissions shift. Well, a CVT is like a continuous shift. It doesn't shift normally, but evidently they have a fail-safe. They have a safety feature that sometimes kick in called limp home mode, and it basically kicks in if your engine or transmission is having problems, and it'll make it so you can't go more than, say, like 30 miles an hour. Basically, you can't get out of second gear, and it'll do it just so you can basically take your car home and not have to tow it somewhere. So this kept getting triggered for some reason. I didn't know what it was at the time. I had to look it up. And it just wasn't working. What are you? It happened when I was taking my sister to her friend's house, and it happened right after I sped up to pass a vehicle so I wouldn't miss my exit, and it just kind of started like not wanting to go, which I couldn't figure out why. So I was like, okay, maybe it is something with the engine or the transmission. So I got her to where she needed to go. It was acting weird. Kept going. Got to where she needed to be. Started to try to leave there. And it just did not want to go. And so I stopped. Waited about 15 minutes. Checked all my fluids. It all seemed okay. This is just a mixture of eggshells and coffee grounds that I'm sprinkling in. It should help with the fertilizer and just nutrients into the ground. So I waited there about 15 minutes, left, and it was kind of doing it normal, being normal. Made it a handful of streets over, and it started acting up again. And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm doing this because the potatoes need about 4 to 6 inches below ground. So, I mean, I'm putting 12 deep. So I'm just adding a layer on the bottom with this nice mixture of potting soil and eggshells and stuff. Finally, I'm able to limp it over to where my grandpa lives. Left my car there, and we went back a couple days later to try and get it to go home, basically follow my mom home, and was able to get it home. taking highway pretty much. Was able to get it up to 60. It was fine. Nothing happened. So I was like, okay, this is fine. I was able to drive it to and from work, for a couple weeks. But in that meantime, I decided to make it to practice. So I'd borrowed my uncle's truck and stayed the night at my grandpa's. In the morning, I go to church and he was going to ride with me. Wouldn't you know it, the truck has a flat tire. So we go and try and change it after church, and we get a tire iron from O'Reilly's, try and break it free, and the lug nut the lug wrench snaps and breaks. So we're like, whatever, can't do it, can't go to practice now. Go home, come back a couple days later to try and do it again. We just take it somewhere to patch it because at this point we're just done. So we get it patched up and repaired and take it home. At this point, with my car in the truck, I had already missed like 2 weeks worth of practice. So driving to and from work, my car's working perfectly fine. So I figured, you know what? Drive it to practice. Well, to church and then to practice. I make it to church, no problem, no issues at all. I go to leave church after lunch to start heading to practice. Right when I leave church, go onto the on-ramp to the interstate, it's right next to it, and my car immediately starts to act up. Something's not working, something is way wrong. And one of the points I did check my transmission fluid, it was only slightly low, but not terribly. Like, it was at a good level. Had my mom pick up some transmission fluid and was able to swing back around and drop it off to me. Luckily, where the on-ramp is, there is an off-ramp not far from it, and I was not too far from the off-ramp, but I was still on the interstate trying to get my car to move forward, and it just is not going. So I had the transmission fluid, and it's still having problems. So we decided to try and force it back to church. We get off the off-ramp, and we turn, and the only way is back to church or uphill. We're about a block away from church. We kept stopping every so often, And you gotta keep in mind, this is literally only 3 blocks from church, maybe 4. And force it up the hill. As we're almost up over the hill and like half a block from church, my car's smoking. I'm like, what the heck? So we're this close. There's no really good spot to stop. So we get it all the way back to church. I get out and my caliper is smoking. My brake caliper. It's the part that pinches the pads to the rotor that makes your car stop. But it was evidently stuck and pinching it. That's how I found out that the braking system can also trigger the limp home mode if something is going wrong in it. I don't have any of the parts with me to be able to fix it there or whatever. So I have to leave it at church. And I let the office people know that, my car's here. Don't let it get towed or let someone call it to be towed. And they said, that's cool. This is Sunday or Monday that I tell them that. And so I'm not able to get my parts until that Saturday. So Saturday ended up having like a snowstorm, so I couldn't go and change it. Yeah, crazy. Just a month ago I had a couple snowstorms, and now it's like 80 degrees out. So that Sunday we were going to fix it right after church. We get to church and my car is gone. And I'm about ready to freak out because it was either stolen or towed, and I was praying it was towed. It was. So I tried calling the company. Nobody answers. So attend church. Church is over. It's about 12:30, 12:45. Get a hold of them, and they don't allow pickups after 1 o'clock on a Sunday. So I was able to talk to our property person at the church. They were able to give the towing company a call, talk to them, knocked it down because it was going to cost me like $300 to get my car back or $250, something like that, because of the towing fee, the storage fee, and this is all a mistaken tow. It's because they tow from our church's parking lot on Saturday night, Sunday morning, because there's an apartment complex right there, and we don't have a very big parking lot. So if they're parking there, we don't have any room for the congregation to park at all. So it is mistakenly towed. And they said if I get it by Monday, I won't have to pay any more fees, just $75 to get my car back, basically. So Monday we have to go get it, but my mom's brake pads are going out on her car, and it is grinding terribly. And I don't know how to change brake pads, so I learned how to change them really quickly by watching a couple YouTube videos, and got it changed within an hour, her front brake pads. So, I mean, I did learn that on my camera. But luckily, they offered to tow my car, where I needed it to go. And this wind is killing me. Get my car towed to where it needs to go. It ended up being a good thing I did. I couldn't get into my car. It was locked, and my key fob was not working. And so my brother and I tried to break into it ourselves. Typically we could get it, but evidently my car isn't normal. If you pull the handle from the inside, it will not unlock. The lock itself is all chrome, so you catch it, you can't get it. It just slips right off. Key fobs have an emergency key on the inside of the fob. It turns out that key in my key fob does not match the lock on my door. So I've had this car for 5 years and just figured this out, and I just could not believe it. So we had to pay a locksmith to come. It cost $100 for him to unlock it, $20 for him to jump my battery, because that's why my key fob wasn't working, is because the battery was dead. And I couldn't open the hood without getting in the car, and the trunk doesn't have a lock on it either, so I couldn't get in through the trunk. It just was a mess. We get into it, get it jumped, get it running. On Sunday is when I found out I couldn't get into it, so Wednesday is when we went back to get it unlocked or try and break in, and called the locksmith to get it open for us. Alrighty, so this is where my mic cut out, of course. And I'm just explaining that sometimes I leave some of the potatoes whole. It's dependent on how many eyes the potato has and how well they're doing. I want multiple eyes per potato because I feel like there's a better yield that way. They can be grouped together, it's fine. Potatoes don't mind to be crowded. And then I just kind of evenly space them apart. Just a little space in between each one. And then some of them I did cut. That's called chitting with a CH, not an SH. It's where you cut the eyes so you have multiple eyes. Like, say if you have a potato with a lot of eyes that are doing well, you could cut it in half or something. Then after you cut them, you let them sit out for a day or two so that the cut end can kind of dry out and get a protective layer over it so the potato doesn't rot under the ground. Anyway, back to the important bit, the rest of my story. So finally on Wednesday I was able to get into my car and start replacing the caliper and pads. Of course there was problems, whether it's a stuck screw or bolt, So it took a couple hours, couple trips to AutoZone, all of choir practice. I was able to get it done though and drive it back home without any problems. I haven't really had any problems with it since. The last couple months were just, kind of tough. I mean, that's just life. It can't always be perfect. But since I got my car fixed, I've been able to make it to practices, and they've been ramping up a lot more. We only got, a week or so, a little over a week left until our first games. We've been working on more tackling and more actual in-game scenarios. I mean, here you can see it. We don't take it easy all the time. We get bruised and battered even in practice, but it's all to get us set up for the game, because a lot of the girls A lot of the players have never, you know, played. This is their rookie year, but we're just getting them more ready for the actual game time. Here you can see I'm just putting dirt on top of the potatoes. You need about 4 to 6 inches on top of the potatoes, and they'll do well in that. You know, pretty much leave them and forget them. Maybe water them if it's been too dry out. But, I mean, they do pretty well on their own. Anyway, I am super stoked for our first game. It's this next weekend against Iowa. It shouldn't be too bad. The following week when we play Minnesota is where it's going to start getting tricky. We are a Division II team, so they're technically like a Division I team. They're called the Pro. They're in the Pro League, I guess you could say, but they're Division I basically. And they won the championship last year. So this should be interesting. I think we'll do all right. I have a good feeling about this season, so I'm not overly concerned about it. The challenge is making certain the rookies don't get overly nervous or down on themselves if things go wrong. But it should be exciting. Today, as I was coming out to plant these potatoes, it was a prime example of the last couple months has gone. We have a cat that had kittens, and she's right by the porch, and I was bringing the stuff out, and let's just say animals are disgusting. I know with cats mainly, but if they have a kitten that dies, and they can't move their other kittens or don't want to or something like that, they will eat the dead kitten. And I won't go into detail, but I came out and saw her doing it and had to bury it before it could start to. So, I mean, that's literally how it's gone. So, yep. But hopefully it gets better. I mean, you kind of just learn to roll with it and do what you can. So, but that's part of life, though. You give and learn from it and move on. So, but you guys take care. I'm excited to upload more videos, or to be uploading videos again. So I'll see you guys when I see you.